Radha Krishna, Giri Govardhan, and all the assembled devotees. When I first came to Boston, it was January 1st, 1971, and the only deities were very large Jagannath deities and little Radha and Krishna. And, but plans had already been made. Rukmini, my god sister Rukmini, was the pujari, and Satsrupa Maharaj was the temple president at the time. And they had already written to Prabhupada and asked if they could get larger Radha Krishna deities. So I remember hearing maybe in February or March that Prabhupada had picked out the deities for Boston, and they were being sent by boat. And I don't remember what month it was. It must have been March or maybe the beginning of April, because Prabhupada was scheduled to come in April to install them. And so it was probably in March when we got word that the boat had arrived at Commonwealth Pier, and Rukmini asked me to go along with her to get, we didn't know their names yet, but to get Radha and Krishna. And when we got to the pier, they were just these two big wooden crates. So the officials there pried open the crates, and we had to examine them to see that they weren't broken in any way. And they were fine. So we brought them back to the temple, and then we started, of course, a sewing marathon to make them at least a few outfits before Prabhupada would arrive. So sometime in April we got word that Prabhupada wasn't coming until May. And then sometime in May we got word that Prabhupada wasn't coming until June. And sometime in June we got word that Prabhupada would really be coming in July. And so it was in July. It was actually July 18th. It was a Sunday that Prabhupada actually came. And for probably the week preceding that, because this time it was really sure that he was coming. And I don't think anyone in the temple slept or ate for that week. We were painting and cleaning, and Rukmini had to go to New York because the press had moved back to New York. And her husband was one of the artists, so she had to go to New York. So they sent Mother Gauri up to take care of Lord Jagannath and little Radha Krishna until Prabhupada came. And Satsrupa had written to Prabhupada and asked him if I could get first and second initiation at the same time so I could take care of the deities, because there were so few devotees left in the temple at that time. And I think Satsrupa might have been the only Brahmin. Maybe, I don't really remember if there were any others left. So, and Prabhupada had agreed to that. So, Prabhupada arrived Sunday afternoon. I guess I'll keep this mostly about Radha Gopivallabha. I could talk all about Prabhupada's arrival and everything, but we'll stick to the program. Yeah. So, well, we didn't, the temple was not here in this building. We were, I think it was 38 North Beacon Street. I always thought it was 40.
3840, actually. 3840. 2 doors.
Oh, really? Oh, that's the problem. Okay.
Is it still there? Yes.
And Satsrupa didn't feel that the temple was really a nice enough place for Prabhupada to stay. Although we did paint 2 rooms for him, blue walls and white trim, and there was a futon mattress bed in one of the rooms and a rocking chair, and the other room a little low desk and a cushion that he could use for writing. But still Satsrupa thought that to be safe, we should have a nicer place for him to stay. So he had rented a suite at the, I don't know if it was the Marriott or the Sheraton, some big hotel downtown. So I had spent all that day Sunday trying to clean that room for Prabhupada, and the more I cleaned, the dirtier it seemed. I realized there was no way to clean the rug properly. There was no way to clean, and it was like up in the sky, so there was no way to clean the windows on the outside. And so we covered the floor, covered the rug with rose petals, and decorated. Someone brought in a refrigerator for Prabhupada's things. And so then Prabhupada came to the airport, and I just found out recently that he was coming from Detroit. So it wasn't a very large plane, and everyone here had gone to the airport to greet him. Well, not everyone, because the Sunday program had to go on, so some devotees had to stay back to greet the Sunday feast guests and take care of them. But those of us that went to the airport, actually there's a picture out in the front hall of the devotees at the airport with Prabhupada. But, you know, and I've heard many devotees tell the same story that, you know, they're waiting to see Prabhupada for the very first time. And you're just watching. We were having kirtan, and it was one of those planes where the plane landed and the passengers had to walk down steps onto the tamarack and then into the building. So we were just inside the building having kirtan and just anxiously waiting, and it seemed like all these people were getting off the plane and no Prabhupada. And then like everybody stopped getting off the plane and still no Prabhupada. And then all of a sudden you just saw this little glimpse of this, you know, effulgent saffron appearing from the airplane door, and there was Prabhupada like the shining sun. And he so regally walked down the steps and across the tamarack and came in, and we all got down to pay our obeisances. And I remember there was a beautiful Indian lady named Saroj who was there. Do you remember Saroj, Soma? She used to come a lot, and she's in that picture. She's also in that same picture. And Prabhupada looked at her and he said, "Oh, you are so beautiful. You must be from," and he mentioned some area in India where evidently the women are generally very beautiful, and that's where she was from. But he was just so gracious. And no, it wasn't Bombay. It was like a you know, like, are you from Gujarat, or maybe Gujarat, maybe it was Gujarat. And then he patted Satsrupa on the head, and devotees were crying, and so then we started the kirtan again, and somehow I don't remember the trip back through the airport to the cars and back to the temple, and Prabhupada gave the Sunday feast lecture. And at the end of the lecture, it was a little later than the usual lecture, and Satsrupa Maharaj said to Prabhupada, "Would you like to go to the hotel now?" And Prabhupada looked in great disbelief. He said, "Hotel?" He said, the brothel and the liquor store are in the mode of passion. He said, the hotels in the cities are in the mode of ignorance, the brothel and the liquor store. He said, the cities and the hotels are in the mode of passion. The country's in the mode of goodness, but the temple is in Vaikuntha. I will stay in Vaikuntha. So Prabhupada would have nothing to do with going to the hotel. So then the next, so still many of us were up all that night continuing, because Gauri had decided to make another outfit for Radha Gopivallabha's installation. And so, and she wanted it covered with jewels. So, you know, there were some of us that were up all night working on that outfit. And I don't remember what time the festivities started in the morning, but, and I don't remember, did they have initiations before the installation or just after?
It was the same ceremony, but they did the, I think they gave us our names first, and then they did the...
And then the deities? Wow.
Maybe, yeah, but I know it was the same...
It was the same, yeah, it was the same ceremony. But we had these big stainless steel bowls that the deities were in, and I think they were just kind of wrapped in some cloth. And Prabhupada, Satsrupa actually bathed the deities, and I remember milk and yogurt and water, and I don't know if there was any other ingredients used. I think it was just milk and water and yogurt. And Prabhupada was sitting back reading from the Sri Brahma Samhita, and Tulsi Devi was there, and then after Satsrupa finished the bathing, Prabhupada came forward to dress them. And I'm pretty sure he dressed Radharani first. And he put on her blouse, and then he went to put on her skirt. But there was no way to put on her skirt because it had been sewn all the way around. There was no opening. We were just so tired, and so, I don't know, somehow. So I ran upstairs to the sewing room and got scissors, and we had to cut it open. Prabhupada put it on, and he made a number of comments as he was dressing them. So I was standing kind of close by. And when they had arrived, I don't know if any of you have seen deities with conch shell eyes. They're, you know, just the white lotus-shaped eyes, but there's just a small black pupil in the center. Not like, well, we didn't know that was a proper way for deities to have eyes. So Jadharani painted their eyes and made them, gave them big brown eyes. So when Prabhupada was dressing them, he said, their eyes. He was obviously not pleased. And he said, I can't remember if he said too dark or too big, or he might have said both. But too big. But we didn't really know what that meant. And then when he went to put the jewelry on, I had made the jewelry, and I would just tried to copy pictures from the Krishna book, like 2 little lines of pearls, and then a circle of pearls with a stone in the middle, and like that. But Prabhupada put the jewelry on. He said, this jewelry is not so nice. So later that afternoon, he called Gauri into his room, where there was a painting on the wall in his room of Krishna sitting on a rock. And Krishna was covered with golden jewelry, embedded with jewels. And he said, that's the kind of jewelry. Even though we had heard that Prabhupada had said at some other time the deities should not wear real gold and jewels because it would invite thieves. But now he was saying, this is how, the kind of jewelry that they should wear. So, when he put them, I don't remember, I don't think Prabhupada personally put them on the altar, but somehow was that when we had the new altar? Had we been building the new, or that was later? That was later. So they went on the old altar. And so little Radha and Krishna were in front. And when Prabhupada, after Radha Gopivallabha were put in their place on the altar, Prabhupada looked at little Radha Krishna and said, they are Bijoy Murti. He said, that means they can travel and preach. So they did for quite a while. Did you make we had a little traveling altar. It was a beautiful white box, all painted with an opening with the scallops at the top, and there were 2 poles inside that we would tie them to. And they went to the Boston Commons on Harinam, and little Radha Krishna, yeah. And they went to Amherst, University of Massachusetts in Amherst once a week. They would sit in the student union. There was a devotee here, Shubhananda, who taught a Bhagavad Gita class at Amherst once a week in the evening. But we would go in the morning, and we had 2 tables in the student union. One was a book table, and one was a table, and I would put little Radha Krishna's altar on it. And I took a Coleman stove, and I would make all their offerings right there and do the artis, and students would go going by. They didn't know what was going on, but it was really fun. And but then it got too dangerous, especially to take them outside. I think they still went to like maybe college programs inside, but to have them out on the commons, sometimes people threw rocks and, like tried to harass the devotees, so we decided it was too dangerous to have them outside, although they were probably protecting us, but we felt like we should try to protect them. So then, I don't know, then their life began as the proprietors of Boston, Massachusetts. And they're just extremely merciful deities. And I was very blessed to have the service of, even though they were caring for me, of pretending to care for them, getting to bathe them and dress them and make their clothes and offer them artis and cook and sew and wake them up in the morning, put them to bed at night. It was just, truly it was the happiest years of my life when I was with them. And they were very reciprocal. I'll just share one story. I don't know how much time it elapsed. I know Mathuresh was here, and he was the cook. And he was an excellent cook. And one morning I went to dress Radha Gopivallabha, and their clothes didn't fit. And I was like, this is just impossible, because it just didn't make sense. But it just, like where I would snap them shut in the back, it just, they were too fat. Suddenly they were fat. It was a Monday morning after the Sunday feast. And I went and got another skirt, same thing. None of their clothes fit. Radharani too, both of them, yeah. And so I had to improvise something and then, add fabric to the back of all of their skirts. And the temple president was Adi Keshava, and he didn't believe me. So I actually just found out last year that he had, after I put them to rest that night, he snuck in, went on the altar, took all their clothes, and tried for himself, and found out, sure enough. So all I can say is Mathuresh was an amazing cook, and they... Oh, what's the rest of the story?
Well, Adhikeshwar told me this story one time. So what happened was, when he snuck in, he thought crazy women. They're all crazy. He did that, he spied on you, he went in, he tried all the clothes on you, it didn't fit. Then he wrote to Prabhupada. He told Prabhupada, he said, should Prabhupada, he said, we have all these outfits, we don't wash them. For some reason, they don't fit. And Prabhupada wrote back and he says, you are feeding them very nicely.
Wow. I never even heard that part of the story. Thank you. Wow. Awesome. So that was Mathuresh. Too bad he's not here. So that's, I don't know, someone else.
In front of Radha Gopivallabha and in Boston again. I moved into the Boston Temple December 1st, 1970 to live. And at that time, ISKCON Press was there. It was the temple at 38 North Beacon Street in Allston. And of course, that's where Radha Gopivallabha was installed when Srila Prabhupada came there in July of '71. But just a little history. When I joined the temple then in 1970, ISKCON Boston was the biggest temple in all of ISKCON. There was like 60 devotees there because ISKCON Press was there. It was even bigger than Los Angeles at that time. And it was very austere too. It was, we were poor. And just a little story to illustrate it is that we always had trouble coming up. I remember the mortgage, I believe it was $1,000 a month on the house. And it was that whole huge 3-story building. It was $1,000 a month, but it was very hard to get enough money every month. So at the end of the month, we were always struggling. Sometimes we wouldn't have enough money to pay the gas bill. So we'd have like no hot water for a few weeks in Boston. It's freezing. And I can remember one time, Srila Prabhupada in one letter or something, he said that in the morning for breakfast, if you eat 4 or 5 chickpeas with a little ginger every day, you'll be healthy. So we used to get, on our plate, we used to use wax paper for plates because we didn't even have plates. So you get a piece of wax paper, usually some oatmeal, and like 4 or 5 chickpeas with a little piece of ginger. And one time, it was like the end of the month, they were running out of chickpeas. So they would soak the chickpeas overnight, and they would cut them into 4 pieces, and everybody would get just one little sliver, a fourth of a chickpea. So around ISKCON, we were a little famous for being so poor that we had to split our chickpeas into 4 pieces. But it was a very wonderful spirit, with the ISKCON Press there. It was, of course, Satsarup Maharaj and Jadharani and, Bhadraj, Rukmini, Muralidhar, Parikshit, Sarup, all these, Prajumna was there with the Sanskrit, Haridayananda, it was still a brahmachari then. But we were poor. And then when, in, I believe it was February, ISKCON Press moved back to New York, and they had to cut like a big hole out of the back of the building to get the press out, and they just loaded it in the truck and they drove away, and they left a huge hole in the back of the temple in the middle of February, and it was like below 0. So anyways, we put up curtains at first just to keep out the cold. So anyways, by the time July of '71, Srila Prabhupada, Satsarup Maharaj, who was the temple president, he wrote to Srila Prabhupada because it was like myself, Sumati, and a few others had been, in the temple for a while, and Satsarup recommended that we take initiation. And Prabhupada wrote back in a letter, he said, yes, I'll accept these devotees as my disciples, but you should wait until I come to Boston and then I'll initiate them personally. And they said, and in the meantime, tell them to chant hard. It was like an instruction from Srila Prabhupada that we were to chant hard. So, of course, getting the temple ready for Srila Prabhupada's visit, we wanted to paint the whole temple, have it nicely painted. And I just remember this one little story that we were painting the ceiling in what was going to be Srila Prabhupada's room. And it was really old, and we put like one coat of white, and you could still see through it. And Satsrup Maharaj was also helping with the painting. And we were showing him how to, use the roller and paint the ceiling. And of course, the one coat of paint wasn't covering it. So my godbrother Sudha said, don't worry, this is not the perfection. We'll do it again. And Satsrup said, no, this is the perfection. This is devotional service. So he had that really nice vision. Satsrup Maharaj was amazing. And anyways, we were cleaning and trying to fix up the whole temple. Sumati had, shared a few stories. This is also my remembrance, but some things are a little different. But Gauri, who was the head pujari, she wanted to redo the altar. It was the old altar. It was just a plywood box. And we just put cloths over the plywood box. That was, the altar where the little Radha and Krishna was. And we had big Lord Jagannath deities on the side. And so it was just a box. That was all the altar was, just a plywood box with cloth over it. And she wanted to make a new Vyasasan. So, I was like the temple carpenter, so I was involved in these things, making this platform. This Vyasasan had poles on the four corners with a cloth between it. And, it was all made in a hurry because Srila Prabhupada was coming. Yeah. And, I got to make it, and Prabhupada did sit on it, but he only sat on it one time, that when he first came to the temple. But more about that later. So when we're fixing up the temple, and there used to be this older gentleman, he was around 80 years old, and his name was Leon. And I remember he was talking to Satsrup that, Srila Prabhupada is the Jagat Guru, spiritual master of the universe. You have to offer him something really nice. The temple's not so nice of a place for him to stay. And he was the one who volunteered to pay for the hotel. And I'm almost positive that it was the Four Seasons Hotel. Here. Yeah, in Boston. It was the penthouse suite. And this man, Leon, who was 80 years old, he's an Italian. I can't remember his last name. But he rented the penthouse suite at the Four Seasons Hotel for Srila Prabhupada to stay in when he came here, because he didn't think the temple was good enough for Srila Prabhupada. And like Sumati was saying, all the devotees went, or not all, but some, you included, went to clean it. And remember, they hung pictures of Krishna on the wall, and they had, vases of flowers and things. But anyways, so we were just, fixing. I remember we painted the floor white where Srila Prabhupada was going to stay. And there was a room next door for her servants, Aravinda, Shamasundar, and Karandar. Those three also came with Srila Prabhupada at this time. And this was the first time that actually it was the second time that I saw Srila Prabhupada in person. And the first time was, I was still just a boy, and I was walking in the streets down by the Common, and I actually saw Srila Prabhupada with some disciples walking. It was 67 or 68. And I just have this, just kind of a vague, a pretty clear memory. And I remember talking to my friend about, seeing Srila Prabhupada and devotees in robes. But I didn't really get to meet the devotees and talk with them until later in 1970. And then I moved into the temple. So I'd been in the temple for a little while. But when Srila Prabhupada came to the airport, that was the first time, actually knowing who he was and, you know, being a devotee myself, all, you know, shaved up and everything. So it's true that almost everybody from the temple went to see Srila Prabhupada at the airport. And just like Sumati Mataji was saying that, you know, we were waiting to the plane, everybody was walking off the plane. And Srila Prabhupada was like the last person, you know, to step out. And we were behind a pane of glass, and everybody just went, Haribol! And it was just like an ecstasy. And then we all paid our obeisances. And then when we got up, you know, Srila Prabhupada was walking into the airport. And he was greeted, and Satsvarup gave him a garland. Petit Pavan was there also. He gave him a garland made out of these lotus flowers. And eventually, you know, he walked out of the airport, and we were having a kirtan. That's what the picture out inside is there. There were all devotees walking through the airport. And then Srila Prabhupada, they had a car waiting for him. And Srila Prabhupada get in the car, and then he drove off to the temple. And we were all just like waiting at the airport. And I remember, personally, I was like in so much anxiety. Oh my God, you know, Prabhupada's going to the temple. I want to be there. But we were left at the airport because we had come in this old blue van that we had. And it was parked in the parking, and the person had to go get it out of parking, come and pick us up. And so by the time we got back to the temple, I remember, you know, just running out of the van, running up the stairs. The temple room was on the second floor, and looking, and Srila Prabhupada was sitting on the Vyasasana. And it was like, whoa, the one that I made. I was like, you know, oh, Prabhupada's accepted my service. You know, it didn't break. He's sitting on it. And I remember the room was like very smoky with incense. They must have had a lot of incense going before he came. And Srila Prabhupada was there speaking, and it was like, because I'd heard so many tapes, it was, oh my God, you know, it's exactly saying the same thing. I just remember, I don't remember much about his lecture, but I remember he said, na hanyate hanyamane sadire, which means, you know, you're not the body, you know, you're eternal spirit soul. And then it was actually, after that, he got off the Vyasasana, and he came and he paid his obeisances, full dandavats, in front of, it was, you know, the little Chota Radhakrishna and, you know, the big Lord Jagannath. And then he went into his room, which was just, there was like a little door on the second floor that went into the hallway of the second floor, and Srila Prabhupada's room was right next to that. So he just went out there and into the room. And while he was in the room, it was just, there was people piled in the room, some people like in the doorway. And that's where actually he had the little conversation with Satsvarup. And at first he was just kind of like greeting the devotees and little, I think, just a little, you know, like chit-chat was there. And that's when, after just a little bit, because it was evening, that's when Satsvarup Maharaj said that, oh, it's getting late, Srila Prabhupada, and, you know, we've rented a hotel room for you. And that's Srila Prabhupada. His eyes got very big. And he said, hotel? He said, hotel, I'm not going. And he quoted a verse, and then he said, the country is in the mode of goodness, the city is in the mode of passion, and the liquor store is in the mode of ignorance. He said, but a hotel is simply a brothel. And he said, I'm not going. And he said, the temple is Vaikuntha. I'll stay in the temple. And of course, everybody there was saying, Jai. You know, Srila Prabhupada had that transcendental vision. And of course, we were so ecstatic that he was going to stay in the temple, you know, with us. It was just ecstatic. And he did. And you know, the 2 days that he was there, he just stayed in this one little room, which, you know, it was only like 10 foot by 12 foot, the room. And I remember we went and we got a foam mat and put some some madrasas on it, and Prabhupada slept on the floor there. And he had this little yellow lectern that we used to, give classes from in the morning, that he would sit behind, this little yellow lectern. And I believe there was a rocking chair in there also. But he just stayed in this one room the whole time. And I can remember, I was like busy doing all these like cleaning and all these things after that. And because that used to be where the Brahmachari ashram was, we were all sleeping in the basement. So I can remember after cleaning, I went down to the basement, and it was like kind of hard to find a place to, put my sleeping bag. So finally I found a spot, and I remember I laid down, and I was on my back, and I looked up, and I just thought, oh my God, I was right underneath where Prabhupada was staying. And I can remember just feeling so blissful, thinking, oh my God, Prabhupada's right there. He's just right above me. He's right there. But then after a while, I just got this like feeling that, actually he's always been here. He's always been in the temple. And he was, with wherever Srila Prabhupada is and his instructions, his books, we're following his instructions. We can have Prabhupada's association in that way. So I can very distinctly remembering, how blissful I was thinking Prabhupada was right there, and then thinking, yeah, but he's always been here. And so the next day was the initiations and the installation of Radha Gopivallabha. And there's actually quite a few pictures of that. I've put some up on Facebook, and it was wonderful. There was, I don't know, maybe 10 devotees from Boston that took first initiation along with the installation of Radha Gopivallabha. They also had a second initiation in the evening for visiting devotees. They actually had 2 initiations, 2 separate fire sacrifices on that day. But what I remember, about the initiation is, of course, Satsarup Maharaj did the fire sacrifice. I got to break up the wood for the fire sacrifice. It was just broken up out of old pallets. That's, what we burned. And there was a box, and Srila Prabhupada just sat on a cushion on the floor. Like I said, the first day that he came, he gave the lecture from the Vyasasan. And that's the only time that he sat on that Vyasasan. The other times, for the initiations, he sat on cushions on the floor. So he sat in the cushion, and there was just a cardboard box in the back. There was like a round bolster and a cardboard box that had the broken up firewood in the back, which he was leaning up against. And Satsarup, of course, did the fire sacrifice, and he also did the abhishek of the deities, and we were all just, sitting right in front of Satsarup and Srila Prabhupada. And of course, most of the time I was just staring at Srila Prabhupada. And as the yajna started, Srila Prabhupada said there should be, in the 4 corners of the sacrifice, there should be reading of scripture. And he said someone should read Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and I'm not sure if it was Ishopanishad, Nectar Devotion. I don't remember the last book, but he said to his servant, who was Aravinda, he said, go get me my Brahma Samhita. And he went. Of course, the room was only just, right outside the temple room. He went and he brought back, Srila Prabhupada had a little paperback version of the Brahma Samhita. And Srila Prabhupada put on his glasses, and he held the Brahma Samhita kind of down low. And he started chanting in just a beautiful tune. And I can remember I had never heard the tune before, because we always chanted the one that George Harrison produced, that we sing every day for the greeting of the deities. But Srila Prabhupada, and he chanted very slowly, and he chanted all the verses, and it was a tune, something like, Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. And it was just with so much devotion, seeing Srila Prabhupada there, chanting this Brahma Samhita. It was amazing. And he didn't hurry it. He chanted like very slowly, and he went through and he chanted all, the verses in that book. And then he put down and took off his glasses. And he had a pile of beads, and he chanted on our beads, right as the Satsrupa was doing the ceremony. And after he would finish chanting the beads, he would hang them on the microphone. And I can remember, I'm pretty sure, actually I don't remember whether they did the deity installation first. I think they did. I think they did the Abhishek and things first. Then when Satsrupa actually carried the Radha Gopivallabha up and put him on the altar, and I don't know, I just had so many different memories. They're maybe not all in chronological order, but when they were Satsrupa did the Abhishek, bathing and then Srila Prabhupada came up, and I remember Satsrupa was drying off Krishna, and Srila Prabhupada was drying off Radharani. And Srila Prabhupada, Radharani was right there, and he kept on polishing around her face and her neck, and Prabhupada would sit back and look at her, and he would polish some more, and then he would sit back and look at her, and it was so amazing. It was, he was just right there with Radharani, and he had so much devotion. Of course, that's one thing that when and so many people tell it when they would meet Srila Prabhupada, he just had so much devotion to Krishna. It was he was feeling ecstatic symptoms always inside, but he didn't always manifest them. But when you get a little close to him, you could start to feel that a little bit. So anyways, I just remember so much he would just polish and sit back and look, and then polish some more, and then just gaze at Radharani and polish some more. And then, as Sumati was saying earlier, dressed, Radharani, and the dresses didn't fit, and I remember they had to get the scissors to make the dress fit. And well, just a story about the altar. Yeah, it was just a plywood box with cloth on it. And after Srila Prabhupada left Boston and went to New York, Satsrupa also went down to New York to see Srila Prabhupada in New York. And while he was there, Srila Prabhupada told Satsrupa that we should make an altar in Boston like they have in New York. And so right after that, that's why we made an altar that was similar to New York's, and we had to get new Jagannath deities, which is a whole nother story. Yeah, those were made a little after in the late fall of '71, and they were made by Parikshit Das, who was one of the famous painters, for the BBT, and I helped a little bit, but mostly it was Parikshit making the Lord Jagannath, Baladev, and Subhadra. Yes, very beautiful. So Srila Prabhupada was there. I remember at one point the Satsrupa, who did the fire sacrifice, and as Srila Prabhupada, I believe, was giving out the names, the fire started to go out, and it was getting really smoky in the temple room. And then Srila Prabhupada told Satsrupa, he said, fan the fire. So he had a paper plate, and he was fanning the fire, and it was just smoke was pouring everywhere. And then fanning, and then all of a sudden it burst into flames, these big flames. And then there was no more smoke. Yeah, and everybody said, Jai. And then Srila Prabhupada said, smoke is Maya, and fire is Krishna. And, oh. And I'll just tell you, when the time for me to get my name came, you know, we were all, of course, told beforehand that you go up and, you know, you pay your obeisances, full dandavats in front of Srila Prabhupada, and he would always ask, you know, what are the 4 regulative principles, and, you know, give you your name. So there had been a few people before me, then all of a sudden, you know, I hear my karma name. So, you know, I come up, I offer my full obeisances in front of Srila Prabhupada, and he says, your name is Soma. He said, Soma means the moon. And I was just kneeling in front of him, and I was like looking at the floor, and when he said, Soma means the moon, I was like, what? You know, I thought we were supposed to get, you know, names of, you know, like Krishna Das or something about Krishna. You know, I was thinking, oh my God, is this a joke or something? You know, but then I looked up at Srila Prabhupada, and, you know, when you look at Srila Prabhupada in the eyes, Jai Radha Gopivallabha, you know, it's like he's, you know, like looking right at your soul. And, you know, you can just tell that he completely knows everything who you are, he knows all your thoughts. And so when I looked at Srila Prabhupada, all of a sudden he just broke into this huge smile. And he said, you are moon-like. You know, and then everyone went, Jai, you know, so, and then then he gave me my beads. And I actually have some pictures that Pyari Mahan sent me of actually Srila Prabhupada handing me my beads, and I'm just, you know, getting them from Srila Prabhupada at that. So, very indebted to Pyari for finding those. And then I remember after I went out, the very next person to get his name was Sudas. And so Sudas came up, he paid his obeisances like we all did, and he asked, you know, what are the 4 regulative principles? I can remember also, I was very nervous that I was going to forget one, you know, but I remembered them all. And then, you know, Sudas, he also said the 4, you know, regulative principles. And, oh yeah, Srila Prabhupada asked you, how many rounds do you chant? He said, 16. So he had the beads, and he said, so your name is Sudas. Sudas means very nice servant of Krishna. Do you understand? And he went, no. And Prabhupada was like handing him the beads, and so Prabhupada took the beads back. And he said, do you want to be or don't you? And then of course he went, yeah. And then Prabhupada gave him the beads. So, and then there was, well, this is one of my favorite remembrances of Srila Prabhupada, that because Srila Prabhupada stayed in the temple, we decided to the men's bathroom was for Srila Prabhupada's use only. So even though there was like lots of devotees visiting from other temples, we all shared the women's bathroom and left the bathroom for Srila Prabhupada. And so I had just been initiated only a few hours before that, and I was standing in the hall with Petit Udurant, and we were waiting to use the bathroom because some Matajis were in the bathroom. And because the way the temple is set up in the hallway, we're just waiting right in front of Srila Prabhupada's door, you know, to use the bathroom. And as we were waiting there, all of a sudden, Srila Prabhupada's door opens, and Srila Prabhupada comes out, just a gumption on. And Petit, I don't know if anybody knows Petit Udurant, but very loud, kind of jolly devotee. And so when Srila Prabhupada comes out of the door, he just threw his hands up in the air and goes, "All glories to Srila Prabhupada," and paid his full dandavats. And so I was there also, and I paid my dandavats. And when we get up, you know, Prabhupada's just like going into the bathroom. And then we just look at each other and say, wow, that was great. You know, Prabhupada was right there. But Srila Prabhupada was only in the bathroom maybe 30 seconds. And he comes out again. And Petit again, loud as he can. "All glories to Srila Prabhupada." You know, it's just us two in the hallway. And we pay our obeisances. But this time when I get up, Srila Prabhupada is just right there, standing in front of us. And he had this most amazing expression. It was like he was like an innocent child, and he almost felt like a little embarrassed. But he had just so much compassion. This smile, I'll never forget it. You know, I had only been initiated just a few hours before. It's like, you know, he accepted all of my karma. And all of a sudden, I'm just like face to face in the hallway with Srila Prabhupada. And he had this just most amazing little smile of innocence, but such great love and compassion. And he didn't say anything. And then he walked, you know, into his room. But for me, it was just a very, you know, amazing thing to just to be like that and have Srila Prabhupada looking just like that. And I didn't... Then there was another sacrifice that night, which Krundar Prabhu did the fire yajna, and Srila Prabhupada thought it was very nice, and he commented that this, you know, although he's American, he's so expert at doing these fire sacrifices. And that was that day. The next morning, I didn't go on a morning walk. He went twice. And that day, they said he just walked down the stairs and took a left on North Beacon Street and just started walking. And he walked for a while, then he walked back, and they talked about ghosts. I wasn't there. I remember, you know, asking some people that went. They just said he was talking about ghosts. But then, when it was time for Srila Prabhupada to leave, of course, we all went to the airport again to see him off. And I remember there was this one photographer, and he actually came from the same town that I came from, and I knew his little brother, so I knew his last name was Sugarman. And he was a photographer, and he had a big, expensive camera. And Srila Prabhupada was sitting on you know, one of the chairs at the airport, and we were all kind of sitting on the floor in front of him. I think there's some pictures of that also. And this one person was like taking picture after picture, and this is, you know, 1971, where it was all film. And sometimes he would like get up really close to Srila Prabhupada, and he would take a picture and take a picture. And one time when he was doing this, Srila Prabhupada did like this, and he said, "Yeah." And Prabhupada actually took off his garland and gave him his garland. Now, this photographer, and he used to visit, you know, the temple. He was a guest. And I was thinking, wow, I must have so many beautiful pictures of Srila Prabhupada. And it wasn't until like a couple of weeks later he came to the temple, and I asked him, how did those pictures come out? And he just hung his head and he said, none of them came out. He goes, I don't know if I had my cap on or the film didn't catch, but I didn't get any of the pictures. But he got the garland from Srila Prabhupada. So, and there at the airport, I remember just, you know, we were having a kirtan, and then Srila Prabhupada left. So that's...
What did you tell about the ghost? Did you say something about the ghost?
On that morning walk, I wasn't there, and I don't remember. Oh, I don't remember. I know one thing is, though, that after Srila Prabhupada left, and we could use the bathroom again, it was like one of the first ones to go into the bathroom, and I got a bar of soap that Srila Prabhupada had used, and I still have it. And it was ivory soap. But Srila Prabhupada used it, and I still have that bar of soap. So, I don't know, any questions? Or, huh? Yeah, I don't have it with me. Jai, thank you very much.
So I used to spend a lot of time here, and I remember, you know, I was the Bhakta Mike then and trying to do service, but I remember being so attracted to the pujaris. Damodar's here, Acharya, there's some other devotees who are no longer with us, Ananda, Pachaka. I just remember seeing them in the pujari room, and you can see still the pujari room says, "Do not enter," you know. So as a young devotee, just learning everything, you wonder what's behind those doors, you know, right? So I was always trying to peek, what's behind those doors? What are they doing there? And so Damodar and Acharya were very merciful to me. Acharya actually wanted to come. I was speaking with him a little bit ago. He really wanted to come. He just couldn't get away from Girinagri, but he is also a long-time pujari here in Boston for Radha Gopivallabha. But I remember just asking them, can I do something? Can I do something? And because I was traveling with a sannyasi, I was an ironer of clothes. So they said, yes, you can iron their gumshas. And so that was, every day I was here, I got to iron their gumshas. And I would think that someday I want to be like these pujaris, you know, there's Damodar and Acharya and Pachaka and Ananda. So it was very enlivening to take part, and seeing their enlivenment naturally enlivens you, just like when you see the devotees enlivened in kirtan or in puja or in all their services, it enlivens you naturally. So it was like that for me. It was just naturally enlivening, and I wanted to be like them. So I was here in Boston for a couple years, but then I needed, for different circumstances arose, that I moved to Puerto Rico. So I was in separation, and is Sanat Kumar? He's not here. But devotees from Puerto Rico will attest that as soon as I got there, all I would say is, oh, they don't do it like this in Boston, you know. And always, you know, they would after a while, they say, well, you so much talking about Boston, you just go back to Boston. But I couldn't go back to Boston. It was, there was reasons why I needed to be there. So while in Puerto Rico, I took second initiation, became trained in Pujari service, and probably more significantly, I spent a long time with a very expert cook whose name is Apurva Prabhu. And we lived together for quite some time, and he taught me everything about cooking. And so I felt that time in Puerto Rico was, you know, a training to come back here to Boston. So eventually I did come back. In 1987, I came back to Boston, and immediately, you know, please let me cook. I want to cook. And at that time, in the mid-'80s, it was the golden age of government boga. And the golden part about it is ghee. We had government boga in such huge quantities that I didn't make buckets of ghee, I made barrels of ghee. And I remember 20 cases a month, 40 cases a month of this butter just rolling in to Radha Gopivallabha's feet. And so we knew that Radha Gopivallabha, he has a very, let's say, a taste for very opulent prasadam. And so I took that mood, you know, because all that opulence was there, then yes, we offer it to Gopivallabha. So devotees or people who remember me back then, they kind of remember that it wasn't the most healthy prasadam that you'd come across, but it was very tasty, I think, you know. I don't know, maybe you remember more, but it was such a pleasure to be able to cook like that for Radha Gopivallabha, and we had so much opulence. The opulence was just unending. The amount of milk sweets, we'd have like 6 different varieties on the Mangal Artik offering, and 3 different varieties throughout the day, and it was just constant flow. And because we had this butter that we really couldn't use it all, So I started bucketing it up, and I would trade with this devotee Janaka in New York. So I would trade him, I'll give you 10 gallons of ghee if you give me 50 pounds of rice, 50 pounds of dal. And so we had this trade going between New York and us. I was giving ghee and they were giving all. So we were having all this opulence. And so it was such a wonderful a time period of the golden age of Radha Gopivallabha's prasadam, and because of this ghee. And so I took a very, I love to cook like that for devotees. And although it was a struggle, we were able to get a lot of opulence today, so we hope that everybody enjoys their prasadam. Around that same time, a little later, 88, 89, I did get the opportunity to actually serve as a pujari to Radha Gopivallabha, and it was very wonderful for me to be able to take that service. And I remember Devaki, who is here today, she was the head pujari, and she was very inspirational, the way she would dress Jagannath, and today she is dressed Jagannath. So, I don't think there's been anyone like her who has dressed Jagannath here. Jagannath always looks amazing when Devaki dresses him with these fabulous turbans. And so I would always try to keep up, although I couldn't, with turbans. It was very difficult. And I had a system. I could figure it out. But the dressing was difficult for me, but I think I got through it. But what I really liked was the bathing part, and that real personal contact with Radha Gopivallabha every day, to be able to bathe them and massage them with oils and like that. So it was a very attachment. I developed a really strong attachment for them, even though, eventually I did have to leave Boston. Starting a family, but Boston was difficult to live in, so I moved to Gitanagari, and it was a difficult time to leave, but I did it. I had other responsibilities. I was becoming more responsible in my life, so taking on different services like that. So, but I never forgot them, and I remember devotees asking me, "Oh, will you please dress Radha Damodar?" And I tried dressing them. I did try dressing them, but it wasn't the same. I had this difficulty, I guess, relating to the naughty boy, whereas I was used to this super opulent Lord and his particulars that I really became attached to. So over the years, I could never really develop a strong attachment to any other Radha Krishna deity. And so they've always been there. But again, that yearning for personal touch of the Lord in a daily fashion was really growing within me. And so I was considering, well, maybe I should get a set of Radha Krishna deities. But again, that contemplation, well, I belong to Radha Gopivallabha. I can't get another. I can't be like a prostitute. I'm dedicated to them. So, and then I thought, well, what other forms of the Lord? And then the form of the Lord of Giriraj came to me. In a very, that's a whole nother story, and maybe we can talk later one-on-one, and I can tell you the story of how he came to me. But I feel that, when I worship Giriraj, I am continuing that seva to Radha Gopivallabha. So I'm very happy to say Giriraj, for the first time, it's been my heart's desire to see Giriraj with Radha Gopivallabha. So I was able to fulfill that today. I'm very happy about that. Well, thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
I'm so old now I can't remember all the stuff that happened. But Madhava stirred it up a little bit regarding his opulent cooking. I remember it was incredible. And people would come from miles around for these feasts. One night for the Sunday feast, we were all here chanting, and Deepak Chopra came with all his chelas and disciples. He wasn't as big that time. He was, up and coming. And they were all, we had a fired up kirtan. One thing I remember in Boston back in the day is that the devotees were very fired up. They were really ecstatic. And so we were dancing back and forth in the temple room here, and all Deepak Chopra and his yogi disciples were there. And I remember after the kirtan, there was lecture, and then the disciples were going up to him, Guruji, we cannot take all this opulent food. This is not yogic food. We can't, this is very, we can't eat halava, all this ghee. And Deepak Chopra said, after a kirtan like that, you can eat anything. Go ahead. And so they all blissfully got in line and had full plates of Madhus Prasadam and back for seconds. So Radha Gopivallabha are looking particularly effulgent and beautiful today. I remember at one point I was recruited to go on the altar, and we did all gold leaf on all those decorations on the altar. I don't know if you guys remember that, but we did gold leaf back there. So I was also thinking that this building is such a sacred, holy place of pilgrimage that so much incredible, unlimited sacrifice and devotional service has gone on here that you just feel purified even coming on this block. As soon as you come close to the building, you start to feel, the influence of the Krishna consciousness movement that has come out of this building over the years. It's absolutely incredible. So, anyway, I thought I'd tell you the story of how I came to Boston. I joined in Potomac Temple in '76, and at that time, the movement was very, very strong in book distribution. So, of course, my first service as a young 18-year-old boy was to wash the pots. And after 1 month of cleaning my heart enough to wash the pots, out to the museums to distribute books. So we distributed books for many, many, many years. But it was a dilemma within me because I saw that people were taking book, they were giving donation, but I wanted to see who was actually interested in Krishna consciousness. I wanted to distribute Krishna consciousness to people that would read the books. You know what I mean? So after a while, this desire started manifesting in my heart to develop a sort of, I didn't know how to do it, but I wanted to, the people that came to the temple, we weren't so much maintaining mailing lists and keeping track of who would come to the temple and following up with them. So I kind of wanted to do that. And in the mid-'80s, I saw that in Europe, they were very successful with congregational development, particularly in Bhagavan's zone. I went and I trained under Sundarup Maharaj in Italy. And at that time, thousands of devotees were coming. Big people also in the media were surrendering. Rock stars, Annie Lennox and all these people. Sir John Mills and Haley Mills became devotees at that time. And there was just really a lot happening. And they were very expert at, they had started developing these mailing lists and putting them into computers. It was the floppy drive age of computers. And we were learning how to do all those things, right. So after that time, I trained and I fell in love with Italy. I was really, because the people were so nice, and it was a place where almost everyone had become favorable to Krishna consciousness. They didn't have this stigma of Krishna consciousness movement being some kind of a cult or a weird thing. So they, they were all, I remember we were on Harinam in Venice one time, and some American tourists came up and started, you a bunch of crazy moonies, go back to the moon where you came from, whatever, you know what I mean? And the Italian carabinieri came and busted him, put him in handcuffs, and says, you're not in America anymore. We like these people. They took him off to jail. Yeah. So I was, I asked Satsuru Maharaj, I'd like to stay here and preach in Italy. He said, no, get back here. You got work to do in America. No way. So I went back to Washington, and I wanted to develop this type of service. They called it at that time contact Sankirtan. Anyone who's had any type of contact, you get their name, you put it down, you get their number, and you figure out how you can get back to them and give them Krishna. Because they've had some purification. They've heard the holy name one time, they've taken cookie prasad, they've done something. Especially those who have come to the Sunday feast. They've had prasadam. So that's Lord Chaitanya's secret weapon, especially when Madhava cooks it. So I went back to Potomac on the order of Satsuru Maharaj, and I told them that I had the desire, I still wanted to distribute books, but I wanted to do it on a congregational level. They said, sure, go ahead. I said, but I need help. I need a vehicle. I need some men. They said, no, you want to do it? You do it yourself. So I was a little disappointed. So after that time, I went to the Mayapur Festival in 1986. And in 85, I had been on Padayatra all over India. And I really had prayed for which direction to take in my Krishna consciousness. And so I ran into Niranjana Swami at the Mayapur Vrindavan Festival. I think that year he took sannyas as well. Yeah. So I saw him take sannyas, and I told him about my struggle. Okay? And so he encouraged me to come to Boston and develop this contact Sankirtan. And we had a vehicle, and Jai Gaur Sundar used to help me, and Sitaram used to go with me sometimes also. And we had little boxes of sweets that we would take. And Maharaj taught me the computer, how to develop mailing list. Keshi Sudana Prabhu helped me to do a newsletter on the way to Krishna, and he was very expert. He was cartoonist and everything. And so we used to go to people's homes with the sweets, with a set of the great classics of India, which had been developed in Europe, very beautiful set of books. And we encouraged people to give $10, $20 a month, whatever you can do it. If you can't surrender in the temple, we did that tape, Niranjana Swami and the Boston devotees, in '89 to encourage people to practice Krishna consciousness in their homes. So we wanted them to have all the prayers, Samsara Dava and Yashomati Nandan and the Shringa prayers, everything, the whole morning program, and other standard prayers that we have. So we wanted to encourage everyone that take, whatever you can do in Krishna consciousness, you do that, and then it will increase. So I just remember it was a very exciting time, and many, many people were taking to Krishna consciousness. Many, many people were happy to help. And Jai. So thank you. All glories to Radha Gopivallabha.